Borrowed power comeback. WoW needs borrowed power to come back? Do people miss borrowed power? I mean, I know people miss Legion legendaries. People miss, I don't know if they miss Hearts of Azeroth or Azerite armor. That was kind of a shit show. But yeah, borrowed power was a thing for a long time. Every single expansion would build ourselves up to be the most powerful denizens of Azeroth that Azeroth has ever seen, and then only to lose all that power at the start of the next expansion. That still kind of exists in that, you know, your gear's always going to be replaced pretty quickly in a new expansion, but overall, borrowed power is a thing of the past. Do players want to see it come back? Let's see what Marsalian has to say about borrowed power coming back to WoW.
WoW needs to bring borrowed power back. Now, go ahead and rage in the comments. I know, I'm waiting. It's intentional. The thing is, you can let us know in the comments what you think about all this, and I'm sure a lot of people would just look at the title and then start commenting, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, some people are going to comment on this before they even watch the video, for sure. Yeah, the belt, Pog, you're probably talking about the new belt that's coming, the disc belt that's coming in the new overpowered delves, or empowered delves, whatever they're called. So, yeah, that's kind of a borrowed power thing. Also, Cersei's circlet, that ring that we dealt with in 11.1. Yeah, I guess that's also a borrowed power thing. You know, we have some of these items now, these best-in-slot items that just kind of exist for a single patch and then disappear, but it's not on the same level of, say, like a Legion Legendary was, where you are seriously getting extreme power, and then all of a sudden it's taken away at the end of the expansion just because the expansion ended.
But more importantly, in the next video, we have a chat and debate and discuss. Let us know in the comments, or put your topic in the comment, and the topic that gets like the most, I don't know, likes or upvotes or whatever, or the one that we find the most interesting, who knows, or the one that repeats itself all over the goddamn comments will be discussed. So basically, the topics you put on the table, we debate, discuss. How about that? That's how this video
Sounds
series
good.
is going to work. You put in the comments a topic and we discuss it.
It's a democracy. Yes.
Does it need it though?
I think so, and this is weird because we've been arguing against this, not we too, but we, the community.
Yes.
Ever since probably Shadowlands. Oh, no, BFA actually, I'm sorry, because Legion was kind of okay, introduced it for the first.
Yeah, Legion brought in the first, like, AP grind, right, with Azerite power, and that was a big deal, and, you know, it was, like, infinite. And Blizzard themselves admitted that giving us an infinite power grind net wasn't necessarily the best idea they ever had, because players reached levels of infinite grind that even Blizzard themselves never expected. So basically, Blizzard was saying that WoW players are capable of a level of degeneracy that is unfathomable. Like, people were reaching levels of power that was breaking the game. They were just one-shotting pull an entire zone in the game and just one-shot it. So they kind of capped that later on when they brought in borrowed power and continued to bring it in later expansions. But still, borrowed power kind of felt shitty in that you always went to this god mode at the end of the expansion and then lost it all because the next expansion kicked off. Azerite armor was a big fumble to start from the very beginning, and that was because it reset every time you got a new piece of armor. It absolutely sucked. Later on, they fixed it a little bit, and they brought in the Heart of Azeroth as well, but still, it was janky. That was probably the worst part of BFA.
First time.
But they had borrowed power back then.
Well, you know, if you're going to argue that trinkets and tier sets are borrowed power, we're going to go down a rabbit hole that we're not going to have a cohesive argument. But I have noticed a lot of people saying, man, I just don't have anything to log in for. There's no more grind to do.
That's always the double-edged sword that was very prominent in World of Warcraft, especially during Legion and BFA, and I would dare say even Shadowlands. Those were borrowed power expansions, man. But they were borrowed power done wrong.
In Legion. Because I really like the artifact weapon. Yeah, I know it had it, but
that was a degenerate, infinite thing going.
I guess.
And,
I will say the one thing about the infinite grind was that it kind of felt good in that no matter what you did in Legion, you always felt like you were getting stronger, right? Like you always felt like, okay, you run another dungeon, maybe you didn't get any loot, but guess what? You got more AP, you got stronger again. Your Legion Legendary was just constantly getting pumped up, and then by the end of it, everyone had a big swanging veiny thing, you know, walking around with them. Everyone was geared the fuck out with their Legion Legendaries, and then also you had on top of that, what's it called? Your separate legendary items that everyone gathered up. Man, we had so much power. I still say, most powerful we've ever been in the game was at the end of Legion. That was insane. Maybe corruption gear at the end of BFA also kind of put us close to that level. That was fun and broken as shit. But Legion Legendaries and everything else that came with it, it was just crazy power.
It was very painful for, let's say, the present and actual philosophy
Shadowlands
of
with
WoW.
borrowed
You play a
skill.
lot of alts. Remember how hard it was to switch
Oh,
from a spec
let's not. Well,
to
I
a
mean,
spec? That's the problem. That's the restrictions of a borrowed
Yeah.
power made like
see what you
that
did there,
in
Ramen.
Legion. I'm saying that we're saying that WoW needs borrowed power back in the sense that we need something extra to have to do, but not be so. How should I put this? Not be that impactful. Now it has to have impact, but not that much. Borrowed power in Legion, borrowed power in BFA, and borrowed power in Shadowlands had a huge impact.
Yeah.
That was the gist of it. That's why
True.
people were doing Torghast. We were doing Torghast to the boredom and like I would
Yeah, but that
rather,
was
like,
that was because
Yeah.
it was mandatory. But see, you're saying that, but right now, Horrific Visions is a borrowed power that has very low impact, and it sucks to do.
Either so
That's the thing, right? But WoW players know, like they follow the path of least resistance when it comes to getting geared out and getting the best stuff for their tune. When you give them a thing to do, and the difference in power is just not that big of a deal, they're just less likely to do it, right? They're just not. I guess what's it called? The reward is not worth the grind, or whatever it is. They just don't care to do it as much. Whereas if you give them something that's like extremely best in slot, you got to have it. They're gonna go do it.
it needs
Like
to
there was nothing good about that freaking Isle that they gave us with the Cersei circlet thing, but everyone knew it was the best in slot ring, so everyone went and did it.
be a little bit more than that, or it has to be.
I think it was like a
very
1%,
cosmetic,
2%
like,
buff.
We had the essences in 8.2, I believe.
You know,
You know,
that's
those
true.
the rank 3 essences or rank 4 essences
Those were really cool. Good
Really
job,
like
Curtis.
visually
But that was
upgrade.
okay. So when you say borrow power, we need to establish something because when you say borrow power, my WoW brain goes to like something that I normally just grind for a lot of the time, and it makes the expansion very alt on friendly. And if you don't play all of
True.
your characters every day, you're just gonna be super behind with everything. So, but I think we're not talking about that. We're talking about
No, let's talk about that. Fuck it.
All right.
Let's talk about that. This is a new format of a video, so let's just go for
a
it.
fuck it format.
So when we look at how they did borrowed power in the past, obviously the main problem for people like us, we're not the majority, remember, but it is a problem. It is a very strong contention point. We play a lot of characters, a lot of different specs, so maybe
Yeah, certainly borrowed power is horrible for alt players. People who play alts, this will always be a bad system for them. Are these people are that want something like this grinding mythic raid or pushing beyond 2,500 IO? I feel like this takes away from people grinding harder content. No, grinding harder content. No, if you're pushing in raid or you're pushing in Mythic Plus, borrowed power is just going to make you more and more powerful the more you do that. I mean, eventually you're going to be able to push higher because your borrowed power is going to continue to build up. I actually think it's kind of the opposite. It hurts the casual more. It hurts the alt runners more. It hurts the people who just don't do that high end content. That's what borrowed power. But Legion wasn't alt unfriendly. Oh my God, Legion was extremely alt unfriendly. What do you mean? If you started a new, even Legion was not only alt unfriendly, it was spec change unfriendly. If you changed your spec in Legion, you had to restart the entire grind for your AP for your new weapon. It was horrible for that. It was probably the most alt unfriendly expansion ever exist in the game. And then on the opposite side, since Dragonflight, we basically had the best expansions ever for alts.
one solution would be, okay, maybe gate this borrowed power for a bit and then just drop it for alts for your account.
Yeah, maybe you're just
you
thinking of
don't
the
get
end of
to
it,
have
maybe.
the same level of power for your alts, okay? No,
They did try to introduce a bunch of catch-up mechanics, fib, at the end of Legion, so maybe that's what you're thinking of, but still, it just made it very hard to change specs or play
no
alts.
restriction on the spec, okay? The spec has to, so you play a class, the specs of that class cannot be restricted whatsoever. That's a given.
Yeah.
Now, when you're talking about alts, you have to have some like reduction in power, but still some sort of like catch up to not feel like a drag every time you want to try out a new spec, a new class. I think that's fair.
I think we actually have the system in place to do that, which is the warband. And
That's so-
I know,
Yeah,
I know,
it's there.
Yeah, I know you haven't done Horrific Visions yet, but Horrific
I've done
Visions.
a couple of them.
I don't know if you've done it on alts because the talent thingy, it's account wide. So that is unlocked account wide, but you still have to grind
good.
the memento thingies to get
Interesting
the.
you say that. Do you think this horrific vision situation is actually some testing ground for future bot power in Midnight?
Dude,
Maybe.
we've been through this so many times before where they do like weird little events, weird little changes of the systems, and we're like, oh my God, can this be the progenitor of a new cool thing? And it never happens.
It's only fair to assume.
It could be, yeah. I mean, they're not doing things for the sake of it. They could have added anything. They've obviously added horrific visions because they're kind of in tune with the void. They're in theme with the patch. They probably play a little bit into 11.2, which we don't know anything about yet. So that would make sense.
I wonder if the belt will be account wide. You're talking about the disc belt that we're going to get soon from Delves. We're gonna check out a thing all about that soon. So we'll see what's said about that. I'm assuming that the Delve grind and everything else is going to have, the same, what's it called, account-wide stuff that Delves currently have, where you grind out the levels of the Delves, then you can go run on your alts at the same high-level Delve. So if you're doing a plus 11, you can go do a plus 11 on an alt or something. So there's that. They're doing more evergreen systems. They learned lessons after Shadowlands. More evergreen systems, less parasitic design. Yeah, that's what they've been going for. They already said they don't want to do borrowed power. The argument in this video is maybe there were some positives to borrowed power.
I
haven't really heard one
that
yet,
people
though.
need a little bit of more incentive to get into the game, to log in, and I think that the Turbo Boost event is part of that because it just gave people, and they have the numbers. They've seen once they added Turbo Boost, like, oh my God, people are logging in way more, playing way more because there's something else to do, something else to grind for.
It's more accessible in the sense with Turbo Boost.
The Turbo Boost event was an obvious win for them. I mean, I had the numbers right here. It's right here, week 11. I mean, look at that. Look how obvious the Turbo Boost. This is the number of participation in Mythic Plus Season 2, and Week 11 was the kickoff of the Turbo Boost event. I mean, a very obvious boost in play. They got basically back to their Week 7 numbers. So, yeah, it was a positive. I think they'll do Turbo Boost events. That'll become a regular thing in the game for sure.
We don't feel it's enough in that regard, but we cannot ignore the fact that we see this in the comments, we see this in the stream chat. People are saying, okay, I got my 3K, I done my Resilient 12 or 13. I don't have much else to do at this point. So it boils down to that moment within the season of an expansion, regardless which it is. Like, is it the first one? Is it the one that will be the craziest one? It doesn't matter really. You always get to a point within a season of WoW where you kind of done with it.
Yeah, that's the thing. But
I think I see what he's getting at here. He's basically talking about that feeling of always being able to get stronger. Yes, Legion was a perfect example of that, where maybe you hit that 3K IO. They didn't really have this back then. But say in Legion, they had the same systems they do today. If you hit 3K IO in Legion, you could continue to run these really high-level Mythic Plus runs to just continue to build up your power for no reason other than just to become the most powerful character that has ever existed on your server. Like, just continue to build out your power level to just go fully insane by the end of the expansion. And that was available in Legion. Like, people could just continue to run runs for they're not for gear, not for best in slot items, not for increasing their item level, not anything like that. They were just running it to continue to grind out IP, to make themselves that much more powerful, to grind out that little bit more spell power or crit damage or anything else, and it would just continue to build up that way. So by the end of Legion, the real degenerates of the game had built up power levels that had just never been seen before in the game.
Remember that we used to argue for this a long time ago when we felt like we were never done with the character. When we had Titan Forging.
That's why we're here. That's
when
why
we had,
we're discussing this.
Yeah, when we had Azrai. So this is a very dangerous ground to walk
again,
on.
I'm waiting for all of you to rage in the comments.
Bring
it.
I think right now they have way better tools to do borrow power than they had, let's say, in BFA and let's say in Shadowlands, when it was like one of the most outraged against system from the community.
Better tools and a way better mentality.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Because at the end of the day, we all are playing a fantasy game, kind of like going deeply into the power fantasy aspect, where we kind of want to feel like the time that we invest into the game is going to be beneficial for our character, and the WoW player mentality is basically like, what do I get out of this? Or how does this help? And we say that, it's not a big deal. It cannot be a big impact in power. And even still, like we've seen it with the dinar system, because we've done some maths. And people complaining that you cannot get the myth track version of the trinket, which is, a kind of like a borrow power, because they're stuck with the hero track. But if you really look at the math, the difference in power is like 0.7%, maybe 1% between the hero version and the myth track version. So the gains are so tiny, yet people are so inclined to go for it because they want that sense of progression. They want that sense of like, what I do gives me value or increases my character and power, even if it's like so tiny. If somebody says that's the best,
It's the core fantasy of playing an MMO. That when you're putting in time, you're grinding out things, you're killing things, you just want to become more and more powerful. That's the whole reason why people play. Now you could say, oh, there's the cozy gamers and the transmog chasers and everything else. Sure, that exists. But at its core, the foundation of an MMO is really built on playing in a fantasy universe where the more you play, the more powerful you become. And that's what it's about. And yes, things like Legion Legendary AP grinds and stuff and Borrowed Power really did give you a sense of that, and that you were always becoming more powerful the more you played.
just going for it.
Yeah, true. And we have to make the statement as we
Until the next expansion kicked off, and then you lost all that power, and that was always a really shitty feeling, which is the reason why they got rid of this.
did in the past videos as well. Tier sets are borrowed power. Make no mistake. That's like the first form of it, and that has been in the game since forever, except BFA and Shadowlands first 2 seasons. Okay, so that's always been like the concept of it is the same. You have some extra type of power which you have to work towards for getting the 2 set, getting the 4 set. Now you upgrade. It's all that mess, right? It's either they have to either go for power increase, not as little as the horrific visions do right now, or giga cosmetics. I always said this. If they put in the game super enchants, different spell effects for different abilities, skins for your spec or
cosmetics, cosmetics and mounts. Cosmetics and mounts will always get people to play. They'll get them to play old content. They'll get them to do all kinds of things. Thanks for checking out my video, by the way. I'm working on making them per class and less about the maths and info. Well, I thought it was a great video, Addison. It's actually, my reaction to it is going up later today, so you can check that out and see what people think about it. I thought it was a great video. That was a great video. He's talking about the, what's it called? The parsing video. How to tank with one button. That's right, one button tanking and if it's viable or not. That was a great video.
Armor dying, your colors on different armor sets, that would be amazing. Plus, I think that could be a possibility when housing comes around, because you can dye some stuff over there, but let's not digress too much. So they either go for a less impactful but still relevant power gain, and that would be infinitely to have people do something and be incentivized to still play and do content after you done with the excitement and you achieved everything you set out to achieve for yourself in the game, or bring in that famously carry on their back the game art team and make that, take that decision, put those nice transmogs in, mounts, as I said, different spell effects for different abilities and stuff. I think people would be incentivized to still play for that, but they have to be a lot.
Yeah,
they have to be. Remember Legion with all of the artifact skins. Okay,
yeah.
So you
By the way, I keep saying Legion Legendaries. The Legion Legendaries were the items that you got besides your It's the artifact weapon system. That's what I'm really talking about. Legion Legendaries were those extra items you got, like the trinkets and stuff, to fill out your tune.
You didn't only have the infinite grind for artifacts, you also had to grind and work your ass out for your skin.
I mean, Legion hit it so out of the park, man. He's right. Not only did they give you the borrowed power, infinite grind, just becoming stronger and stronger, they also gave us some of the best cosmetics we've ever seen in the game. Like till today, not just the artifact weapons themselves, which look glorious. They are still the best looking weapons in the game, but even the raids from Legion, like the Suramar raid, Nighthold, like that Nighthold raid to me still has some of the best cosmetic armor in the game. So not only were we super powerful and crazy badass, we looked badass. Yeah, it was just a good expansion all around, honestly.
Also had the
class hall
and
stuff,
work your
mounts,
ass out for your skins, and
they
those
were
some of the most amazing.
They were all different. You had to either do raids every week for a couple of months. You had to do dungeon achievements. You had to do the mage tower. You had to find a secret one hidden in some mob or chest and stuff.
But you had stuff to do. I don't remember in Legion, although I was mainly PvPing at the time, but I was doing a lot of extra stuff for this. And even in PvP seasons back in the day, Legion, it sounds like it was so.
Bro, it still feels like yesterday sometimes.
Yeah. But it was still it came to a point where you felt like bored, or you got your 2.2k rating in arenas or whatever. Similar to PvE, you probably got your head of the curve or cutting edge or whatever.
Sure.
Your Mythic Plus rating for the first time. at one point something came along. It's like, man, I'm kind of done. Nah, Legion wouldn't let you
Yeah.
do that.
No.
You had so many things to go to chase after. You either chased your power infinitely, or you chased all of the other stuff that would enhance visually your character.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
it's
saying?
true. Yeah, people were logging in for that infinite grind. I mean, in Legion, I was in law school at the time, and I still remember like between classes. Oftentimes, I had like a big break between like my morning classes and my nighttime classes. I would go to like the student cafeteria area. There was like this basement there. And being the degenerate that I was, instead of socializing on campus, what would I'd go down to the basement and log in and do some freaking Legion Mythic Plus runs on my tunes in the basement. I'll just run that shit. And why? Not necessarily to always get gear, but just to continue to build out my AP on my artifact weapon, just to get that much stronger. Be like, oh, I got like 2 hours right now. Let me get a little bit stronger. And that's how it felt. Like whenever you were playing in Legion, you just always felt like you were getting stronger.
So
You made the right choice.
It has to
Thank
be
you.
one of these two.
They
I'm
definitely-
still going for the power, though.
They definitely have the grounds laid out for the hero talents, where they could use the hero talents as the blueprint to add spell
Yeah.
effects.
Well,
to
let me,
add
let, me, let me
cosmetics.
let you in on something. I hate hero talents. I think it's the lazy way of doing things, and
But-
it's the lazy way of just adding and reshuffling talents within the existing talents.
Yeah,
It's,
I mean, hero talents were just more talents on the talent tree. They like present it as a separate tree, but in reality, it just feels like okay, it's just an additional line on your talents. I think they did some okay stuff with hero talents. Some of them are kind of cool, but overall, it just felt like they were just adding more talents to your talent tree. And it was, so what? It's called hero talents. What's the big deal? Do you think that we'll ever see another expansion with that kind of intricacy due to how they change and how often they are going to start dropping new expansions? Jones, I mean, if they continue to do sagas, I think if we saw a borrowed power in the version that we saw in Legion, it would continue across an entirety of a saga rather than just a single expansion. So maybe like the World Soul Saga, we'd get something that would start in either, this expansion or the Midnight expansion and continue all the way through the Last Titan. So, and then we kill the big bad at the end of it because the big bad basically extends through all 3 expansions, and then you get a kind of a power reset after that. Maybe that's how they'll do it. But you also risk losing players if you do it that way, because that kind of always like marks the end of a chapter of WoW, and you might get people who just don't want to reset after that and they just stop playing. So, or you'll get players who join, say mid expansion or at the start of the Last Titan, and they're already behind because they didn't play the Midnight expansion. That's where the issues come in. You can always bring in catch up mechanics, but you just don't want to create a barrier to entry too. That's a problem with continuing with borrowed power through expansions.
my
I don't know
opinion.
if they'll ever do it again.
I was
Probably
mostly
not.
talking about the cosmetics. Like if
Yeah,
you are
of course. We did talk about cosmetics with the hero talents. They had their chance. I don't think it's gonna happen. Like they didn't prove they could do this properly because they had a big chance
Yeah,
for all of
it's-
these specs. And I know they did the hunter animations, which were really cool, which we covered. There's a couple of things done well there, but they had the chance to go full on out of there, and they didn't go for it.
Was the
that
mo-
had to be the 100% most like no-brainer to put in what would be like one of the most epic things in the game up until now. Just give me the visual representation. I want to be a Templar Paladin. Make me look like a goddamn Templar Paladin. I want to be a Slayer Fuhrer. Make it put out all that goddamn blood all around,
Right.
that stuff.
Cosmetic
I
stuff.
don't want to go there because we're digressing a bit, but it is an option.
Yeah.
What is the
Could have
best
been an
option?
easy
Is
slam
it-
dunk.
Because this would not satisfy the 1%ers. Okay, this cosmetic thing couldn't give two rats ass about this. So what is the solution here? Because we know they cater to the 1% as well. They never ignored those people.
Yeah, well, that's the loyal player
Those people are the loudest too. The 1%ers are the ones who give the most feedback.
base, and you cannot really ignore it.
That's why
Those
they
are the
don't
people
ignore.
who keep playing the patch after 3 months when everybody else is
Why I'm asking.
taking
So
a break.
what's the best approach here? Do we go for that slight increase in power more than what we have now with horrific visions?
Yeah, you're talking about Inscription. Yeah, I miss Inscription being relevant. Inscription was a really cool way to add cosmetics to your abilities and stuff.
Or do we go for Giga
Blizzard's
Cosmetics,
kinda thrown
the
that
most
out the
epic
window.
things you've ever seen, both within your armor and your actual spell effects?
The
Or
thing
do we go for a compromise?
The thing is, we live in a world where right now every patch and every season is about, I think, 39 atom levels increase in power from the previous one.
That has to
so
stop
so
also.
the power creep is super huge in between each patches to the point where we started this expansion expansion where we had like what, 1 million HP, 2 million HP.
I remember. Let's not get into the details.
And
but-
now we're like in the tens, and by the end we're gonna have like about, I don't know, 50 million HP. It's just like ridiculous numbers. Maybe it's not that important, but it skews the perception of player power, and it skews the perception of like what your character is supposed to do when you just have like just more zeros on the screen. So when you add constant increases in player power, how are we gonna do this? Are we gonna do this like the 6 item levels of turbo boost, which obviously seems really good, but if we do this every consistent patch, it's just gonna get like to some ridiculous where every expansion we're gonna have a number squish, and then it's like a whole different can of worms.
I don't know why they don't. Probably it's a technical thing, but they should just
Number
go
crunch
down to
soon,
like
probably.
super low numbers instead of like every once or twice 2 expansions do the number squish. Just go on 1 expansion, just
Just
get it all
cut it
down.
down.
Like my crit is for 100, man. I slap that mob. 100 means half the HP of a mob in plus 12.
Like the olden days.
Yeah. Then you have room.
You know what? I've watched probably everybody has watched Dradnos' latest video with his rants, and one thing that came to mind when I saw his video is item sets. Item sets that are not just tier sets. It can be a crafted set. It can be a seasonal dungeon set. Collect 10 pieces of this dungeon, and then you make like a 2 set on your rings, or you make a belt and a boot and a cloak
Item
type
sets.
set.
Yeah, Dragonflight had some cool ring 2 sets. If you guys remember the interaction between the flame rings, right? There were like 2 rings that you could get. And if you got both, then it was basically a little 2 set bonus if you used a fire ability or something like that. And I had those rings. That was cool. I do agree. More set bonuses is kind of a fun thing outside of tier set.
There were things like that in WoW in the past. I remember.
Yeah, and
like
we can,
trinkets.
and that opens up a lot of options for them to edit. They can add like, Bloodthirst now hits 5 targets and does execute damage, or your Whirlwind turns into Bladestorm, or they can do stuff like that for all of the classes.
That's an option, for
and it's
sure.
like on a 2 to 3 item piece. It's a seasonal thing. It can go away, and it can take a lot longer to grind than the tier set. It can be a complementary thing to the tier set, or it can be, this only works if you have the 4 pieces of the tier set to incentivize people to keep grinding and get this item power, and then maybe it can be like an achievement where your alt has it, but you still need to upgrade it all the way up to whatever highest item level gear you have.
Yeah, sure. It's a very good idea, and I think like if you want to like please everybody, you have to give something in this regard for the 1%ers, so they would be happy as fuck because they would be able to like constantly like grind to get to the ultimate power and not even then never stop. But it also has to have some sort of significance for people who don't really care that much or don't have to feel forced to do this. We don't want to go back to like the world of warcraft.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
So if it's gonna
That's
be
tough.
about power, regardless if it is like 2 sets, like item sets, like trinket sets, ring sets, neck and ring, whatever it is, or something extra completely, it has to be very enjoyable to get. Because if it's gonna be grinding something like Torghast all the time or island expeditions like in BFA, they don't. Sadly, we're coping now, but they don't have a good track record of bringing you nice gameplay for getting that power. So, in my humble opinion, if they're gonna bring it, and I'm at this point seeing how the numbers are for WoW, and it's not doing great, even though it's a great expansion, but it's not doing great. It's clear now, for us at least, that WoW did better, even with all the heavy criticism, it still did better during the Borrowed Power days. And I'm not talking
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that's because of Borrowed Power. It's just different times. I feel like now the ceiling for success or the numbers for what would be considered a successful game are just a bit lower. There's just more variety out there. There's more to do. Most people are not just playing WoW and that's their only game anymore. There's just so much more competition out there, whether it's from other companies or indie dev companies. So you're competing more for people's time. I just feel like a successful MMO will never hit the numbers of like prime World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King numbers. That if you're gauging that as like the indicator for success, then no MMO is ever going to be successful ever again. But at current numbers, I think and with purchases, items in the store, and all that shit, you can be a successful MMO and not have 12 million plus players.
And the COVID
pandemic,
stuff.
yeah.
So that kept people coming back more. I don't know why. Maybe it's something with the human psyche. So I'm sure it is. But it's clear we need something external
That's right, Haas.
to keep our asses engaged and hooked on. Because if that doesn't happen, you have situations like you had in Dragonflight, where Dragonflight had like a lot of season going into drought mode. We're gonna have situations like War Within season 1 and now season 2, where you're gonna have a lot of people leaving because a lot of people get their stuff, they get done, and there's nothing else to do. Plus, you have the competition. I don't know, all of the other games that are coming out, and you're done with WoW. You've done your keys, you've done your CE or whatever, right?
I think this is a much deeper problem because you're saying that it did well, and it did well, but we're also looking we have to look through the lens of WoW went through some major backlash that made a lot of people jaded, and that's 3 expansions ago when WoW was doing really well. And WoW is doing less and less good with each expansion because it's formulaic approach. Because, okay, sure, this new this new expansion brings a cool new shit, but it's still a raid, it's still a dungeons, it's still get a tier
first cadence. Good morning, Sandy.
And the trinkets and play the class. Right now we just have a couple of more talents which are not really choices in hero talents, but the formula is the same. Though. And the borrow power, like even if they bring it back, it's not obvious that it's gonna work, but what we could actually say is that right now the tier sets are kind of boring. And they have been criticizing because what was interesting
they're
about
just stat bumps. Yeah, we need better tier set bonuses for sure. I miss it when tier set bonuses used to change your rotation. Like they were so good, they would change an ability in such a crazy way that suddenly, once you have 4 set, you're doing your rotation in a different way.
Borrow power, sure, you might not have liked it, but the legendaries in Shadowlands did impact your gameplay quite a bit. It made, for instance, like Prot Warrior have a different effect on its spell.
I would say the best example would be better example and best, the essences. Those were impactful, and those were like
there was like so grindy, but that was like once you got them, you got
felt
them.
it, and
the heart of Azeroth.
The part, and it played the part, and it was that impact.
Okay, it was impactful, and that was the same. And we're talking about essences when they were, I think didn't they add like a way to purchase them at one point?
At one point, yeah, but still,
because the grinding,
I didn't mind the grind for essences that much, except for the PvP one, which was ridiculous.
Blood of the Enemy,
Conflict and Strife.
Oh, and but Blood of the Enemy was the best one. We used Conflict and Strife because we did a lot of arenas at the time.
It was. Those were the only 2 that hurt. Otherwise, the grind for those really implicated you to just play the game more or less, like do the raid, do dungeons, all of that.
And even with the corruptions, that was like probably the best WoW has ever been with a borrow power system when it was just all crazy across the board. Yeah. And it goes to show because
corruptions were broken. That was a good time.
Happened then when they ripped the cord and they just gave you get everything, guys, just have all of the things that happened with the covenants as well. As much as we trashed them whenever they made covenants switchable, it's like, oh my god, I want to swap my covenant for this dungeon and see how that works out. When you give people more shit to do, even if it's borrow power,
Covenants should have just been a cosmetic thing. That's the truth. Attaching player power to covenants was a bad idea.
That borrow power definitely needs to be like swappable, changeable, or adaptable.
No, not gated, not restricted, not.
Yeah, we covered this. No restrictions whatsoever. Okay, restrictions. Sure, there could be some restrictions when you're talking about that level of power you gain from a main to be transferred from an alt. That wouldn't be fair. Those need
to work a little bit for it.
Exactly. But again, as opposed to Legion, you cannot really like gate me if I'm playing Red Paladin and like for 2 weeks from
now. You're never
respecing.
That's fine. You're Red Paladin forever.
Yeah, I don't want that. I don't want that. I want to try Prot.
That was Legion.
Try Holy, right? But it gives them and another thing that they need to do, and I think we can wrap it up with this one. What they did in the past with borrowed power, and this was very, very heavy in Shadowlands, I felt, and in Legion to some capacity, they should not gimp the specs to just complete them with some borrowed power. No. The specs need to be fully on functional and not feel hollow without this borrowed power.
Yeah,
the borrowed power needs to enhance, needs to gain. Not because you remember we talked about this during Shadowlands, especially during Shadowlands Alpha. The specs felt so weak up until the point you got your legendaries, you got your covenants, and everything felt like they were ripped from their specs, from their like actual capabilities, and put on this external barrier. That doesn't need to happen. The specs, like how we have now, the talents and everything, they should work. They should not feel hollow. And borrow power should just like add on top of it.
Borrow power was also an easy way to fix certain problems with the spec, and maybe they've gotten complacent. Obviously, you said that the mindset has changed, so hopefully we're no longer in that situation.
Cope.
Because I don't want to say that hero talents fixes some of these specs, but to be fair, if Pro Warrior didn't have hero talents, if Warlock didn't have hero talents, if Druid didn't have hero talents, that would be boring ass classes at this point.
I agree, and
Yeah.
I can tell you at the same time that all of those hero talents could have been baked, replaced, or put in the existing talents.
Exactly.
and
That's
have
what
some-
I say about hero talents. Why they're kind of underwhelming. They just added more talents to your talent tree. They could have easily just been part of your talent tree, and you make the choice whether you want to go with the sand lay-in, branch off, or the other, what's it called? Whatever the other ones are, I can't remember freaking right now. I'm too tired. But going through them, you picking your talents. It's really just a version of the talent tree. That's why it wasn't. It was kind of underwhelming.
something else. I remember
They branded
talking
it as
to
hero
somebody,
talents.
which we will not name, who used to work there, and he was saying that he was opposing this idea very, very much when they were discussing it back in the development stages, and there were other way cooler ideas to go about what would be the extra thing
Yeah.
from War Within, right? So there were other ideas, but this one was like, I think in terms of the delivery, the schedule they needed to respect, this was the best thing.
100%. It was very not rushed, but very bland and very bare bones. When you look, especially at the Hunter, so much so that they had to like completely rework it for 11.1.
Yeah.
Where Dark Ranger, probably the poster child of borrowed power, was like the worst and most boring one in the game. So it's definitely a hit and miss. It's definitely something that they need to put a lot more effort and resources and priority into, because it comes down to what's the War Within? What's the thing with the War Within? Oh, you have hero talents, and then people are not gonna go into the systems and how good the expansion actually is, because it is. They're gonna look at the shiny new thing, and the shiny new thing is usually the borrowed power. And right now, the shiny new thing is the hero talents. And if you're gonna get your friend in, and what are you gonna tell your friend? Oh, you have like 7 classes with awesome borrowed power, but I want to play one of them. No, those are no. Just play these.
Yeah.
But WoW has 39 specs.
Exactly. But yeah, so this is kind of like the situation with borrowed power. I believe it's going to come. If not in midnight, although I do believe in midnight we're going to have borrowed power. If it's not going to happen then, I'm going
we'll
to bite
see.
my tongue. And it's 100% coming in the last Titan. At least Ian did say that at some point
Yeah.
he's going to come back. So
Maybe in the last Titan, just because we're going to be fighting such crazy cosmic forces that it would only make sense for us to need something to make us crazy powerful to be able to handle that kind of fight. And then that'll go away, so it will be a form of borrowed power. But I don't know if... I could see it in Last Titan, not so much in Midnight.
we know it's on the horizon.
They're already using hero talents as borrowed power because their initial concept is like they're gonna go away after the World Soul Saga. It's just something that lasts 3 expansions instead of 1. They're probably gonna reiterate on it, but depending on the reception, they're probably gonna switch it with something else.
Yeah. Now, click this video out. Now, again, click out the video. I don't know how that
Click
works.
out.
Click this
Let's
video
click out.
and
Click
check
out of this.
it out. It's all about... What is it about?
Click out, I think it's
It's
check out
about
classes, races.
top 10 races in World of Warcraft that needs to come in midnight to save the game.
Click it!
There you go. Yeah, we watched that one. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, overall, look, I understand some of the arguments for borrowed power to return. But there was just those, those negative sides of it. Bad for alts, bad for returning players. That kind of stuff, I think, will hold Blizzard back from really going all in on borrowed power again. Now, can I see it happening in the last Titan to help us defeat those big cosmic challenges? Sure. Overall, nice video from Marcellian.